Order. 301. Okay, see ya.
There's a lot of cars.
Did everybody get the minutes from last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
So make a motion to put those in.
I make a motion to accept the meetings as presented via the email from last meeting.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Want me to shut the door? Is it
You can, yeah.
too or at least close it?
I invited Trevor here, so I know we had a lot of questions on, the AOC and then just the whole animals in general. So that's why I invited him to get some of these questions, so we could get the policy done. And so I don't know if anybody has any questions. Let's start. That's the first question I'll say. When it comes to, can we have our animal control officers do like an annual inspection? No. Why is that?
No, and it's so frustrating. The only thing that, you're the ACO, right? The only thing the ACO has legal authority to inspect are registered pet dealers. So, and to be, you're required to register as a pet dealer if you're an individual that sells 3 or more litters of dogs in a year. So first you'd have to identify, unless they self-identify, unless somebody's a breeder here in town and says, hey, I'm breeding Shepherds and it's my little home business. If they have 3 or more litters, then they have to register with the town clerk. It's a $25 fee. And then your ACO can inspect them. They have to, it's not real useful because the ACO has to give a 24-hour notice to say, call up and say, hey, I want to stop by tomorrow. Is it convenient? And then they can go in. They have to be allowed in. But if you're and I know there's this, you give me a little lead in that there might be a specific issue in town you've been dealing with, I've read it in the paper, is that if an individual is not a breeder, they're just a rescue, then there currently are no inspection guidelines.
Okay.
So we have 3 people in town who are registered as pet dealers.
Oh, good, okay.
She is one of them.
Oh, she is, okay.
It's
All right.
The Parkers on 64, who I think they breed labs maybe.
Yep.
And then Glenn Darling, who has the hounds that he breeds on, what's the name of that street?
I don't know, he breeds, I think, walkers and
Blue Ticks. It's,
for hunting.
yeah, it's the road that Young Road is off of. I'm blanking on the name.
Baptist?
No, but it's close to that.
So then it would be
It's like-
Martin. No, sorry, Gilbert.
Gilbert.
Yeah.
So he's on Gilbert. So there are, and I haven't inspected his multiple times because his wife has been like, come inspect. So
Nice.
I've been there. I've not ever been to the Parkers, but the only complaint I've ever gotten was one of their labs was running loose. So it wasn't even about the care of the dog. And then Sheila did register as a pet dealer and a special license. But she is a 501c3, I believe.
think last time I looked it up, she may not be anymore.
How would you separate that? I mean,
Well, we had to we still have separated because Random Rescue is 501c3, but my boarding is not.
okay,
So we have to have two different accounts.
okay, so,
I don't think she has two different accounts. And I'm not sure why she would have a pet dealer permit.
Yeah, that I find curious, because pet dealers specifically for selling puppies.
There's another person too, Hill, somebody with the last name Hill.
she did just have a litter, no?
She did, but
But she didn't sell any of them.
she's kept them
She
all.
had 10, was that, how old is the license, do you know?
How what?
How old is the license, I mean, how long has she had it?
That's from April, right?
Yes.
The registered ones for this year.
Yeah, so, so it says on this thing that Barb gave me, pet dealers, any person who sells or exchanges or who offers to sell or exchange cats, dogs, or any combination thereof from 3 or more litters in any 12-month period. And it says pet dealer facility inspections may be performed at the town's discretion. The pet dealer licensing requirement does not apply to pet shops, animal shelters, or rescue. So she doesn't need to have one.
But she does.
But if she has
Right,
one,
that's your foot in.
That's your foot in.
Yeah.
But couldn't she say, I mean, I guess if she researched.
After you inspect, she can.
Because as of now, she's registered as a pet dealer.
Yeah,
You can
but
go to your-
here's the whole thing is, so the game wardens have inspected what she allows them to inspect. Her house building is what she doesn't allow because she says it's her residence. Now, I don't know if without a warrant, anybody has any right to say you have to let me in your house. So she can say, I don't have any dogs in there, even though we all know that there are. Because that's what she did with us when we went there. She brought out dogs.
Yeah.
But there were, I mean, probably 15 at least that we didn't see.
And we didn't see any of the inside cats.
Or living conditions. So they would just come out.
Let me ask you this. If she's a registered pet dealer.
Yep.
And you're inspecting, what you're inspecting is the premises that these animals are kept in.
So there's so many restrictions to it. The law, and that's what I'm looking up right now, and you can go into the law, it's specific. The challenge is she gets to choose. So you've brought up all the points here, is that she may on one side say, I'm a pet dealer, and this room here is where I breed my puppies, that's my puppies. This space over here, I'm an animal shelter, and this has nothing to do with my pet dealer business, so you can't look here. You can only look over here.
Right. Right, but that would at least, if you're doing that on a yearly basis, she's going to have to let, unless she's breeding animals out in the wilderness somewhere.
Well, she has buildings.
Okay.
So she lets, which are not up to code, but are for some reason saying it's okay. But, so yes, if I walk in and I say, she says, this is where I do all my pet dealing, and I say, this is terrible, like we did, and we took photos and we presented them all to the game warden, and his reply was, looks fine to me. So that's where we then are stuck because we don't have the enforcement. And then at that point, she then said, okay, you 3 that came on my property and looked, you're not allowed here. And so she says, I'll work with this game warden who is,
And that's the way the state statute reads.
So what do you inspect? I mean,
What
if
did
I'm a
we-
breeder and you come in, what do you inspect in?
Probably living conditions, like how do you keep your dogs? Are you able to separate
Is that including an animal count?
Cleaning and sanitary.
animal what?
Count? I mean,
Oh, the number of them?
yeah.
Probably, but I don't think there's a rule anywhere that says you can't have. But yes, I mean, overcrowding.
I think the only thing you could do is like the space, the living space for crates,
Right.
like you do for the beagles.
What about veterinary visits?
So I could ask for all of the documents, I would assume, on the ones, her dogs or cats or whatever it is that she is breeding. But yeah, but I mean, as soon as I think she learns what a pet dealer permit is, she's gonna pull out on that.
She doesn't yet though.
No, but I mean, I'd have to show up with a law enforcement. Otherwise, she's not gonna let me on
Okay,
there.
okay, with that being said, would that be Orange County? That's a good charge. Would that be Orange County or would that be the game warden for that?
Going to depend on who you can get to work with you.
Okay.
I mean, it can be any law enforcement officer. Now, where towns like you run into challenges is that if you don't pay for specific law enforcement, then you get the default. So in this case, unless your sheriff's contract, if your sheriff's contract covers this, and it's included in whatever services are provided by the sheriff, then you can go to them and say, hey, we have a contract with you, we need you to come do this with us. If it's not covered by the contract or they say they can't do it, then the default now is the game wardens.
But I wonder if he would, because when he came, he said
The sheriff.
Yeah, 'cause he did
that
talk
he
like
was willing as long as he had the manpower. So I think if he had enough notice, which we have to give her 24-hour notice anyways.
And that's when she's gonna look this up.
Yeah, but you can't get vet bills in a day,
No, yeah.
or vet records in a day, in terms of if the vet is not open.
No, but you can say, she can say, they're inspecting me as a pet dealer, and then Google this and say, I'm not a pet dealer.
But she has a license.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if she then
If she has an open license, I don't think a bar can say, I don't serve alcohol, or a restaurant says, I don't sell alcohol, but they have a liquor license on the wall. They can't say
They
all of a
can't.
sudden.
Okay.
Because they got in trouble with that.
Yeah, I mean-
to a minor, I mean.
I would assume, like, we all have driver's licenses. I can't say that I don't have a license. The state of Vermont says I have a license.
I think what she could try to throw at you was like, hey, I'm doing the right thing, I've got a pet dealer license, but you know what? I don't have any litters. I'm not breeding it, I'm not breeding now. There's nothing to see here. Any
Right.
dogs here for my rescue, they're not for sale. She can,
She can
But you
say,
could-
I
you
might
could-
might do it, so I have it in case I need it. But there's nothing to
My
inspect.
question would be, can they inspect previous litters? Like, a business has to have records, right? Like,
Having
what-
sold.
I mean, I would have to read here. It says that you can inspect compliance with standards adopted by the Agency of Agriculture. I don't know what those are. So you would have to pull up those standards or go to the Agency of Agriculture and say, what are your standards? And then you can inspect to those standards. Again, only if she'll let you. And she could tell you, I don't have those records. Because, you know, I haven't had a previous litter. I don't know what she can tell you. And this isn't like a search warrant where you can force your way in and force her to do something. This is all voluntary.
Right.
yeah, I think the big focus is, I mean, where I'm sitting is we're trying to rewrite the ordinance based on what the town can and can't do moving forward. You know, unfortunately, what's done is done. So how do we, like, a big one is, for instance, if we have a dog, this is a dog running at large that's malnourished, the town, Samantha as the town animal control officer gets a report of that, the dog gets put into the town's custody, I don't want to say custody, but is taken in by the town, cared for the town, that the owner has to make compliance before that animal, either the animal is impounded until properly cared for, until there's a correct plan, and or the dog is adopted away to a pet owner that can handle it, or euthanized. I mean, that's the worst of all three case scenarios. But so I think that's where at least that's where I'm sitting, is how do we deal with future instances with, correcting what we don't, because right now our animal cruelty ordinance is essentially state statute, which has all
been changed.
I'm sure, and plus it isn't based on civil penalty. So the town doesn't have legal authority to do anything criminally, but we do have the rights for civil. And I think Sam shared a story with Berlin. Are you still taking care of the dog in Berlin?
Yes.
So we're trying to make sure that, so if Sam, as our animal control officer, has to take in an animal, that the owner is responsible, and the owner essentially forfeits ownership to said animal by not following the ordinance correctly.
So the other thing I think that we have the big problem with here, with the game wardens specifically, is follow-up and enforcement. And so to go back to Heidi's Haven, which it's going to come up every time I have to talk about an animal cruelty issue, but I picked up a dog that was running loose. It was severely underweight, had missing patches of hair, etc. I took it to the vet. I took it to my vet, which was Onion River, which is a well-known vet in the area. They assessed it was a female, as a 2 out of 9 on the body scale, okay? And then a plethora of other things wrong with it. I took it home. I had it a week and a half, maybe. And the game wardens came and took it and returned it to her and told us that there was a compliance plan in place, but they would not tell me what it was. The dog weighed 41 pounds when I had it at Onion River. And then Sheila just posted maybe 2 weeks ago a vet bill for that dog from her vet that said, and it didn't say this in the vet paperwork, but she said, just took, dog to the vet thinks she looks great, consistently been 40 pounds since 2009 or whatever, whenever she got her. And so that says to me that she's not following a compliance plan, because the dog is 1 pound less than it was when it left my care. Her vet is, according to her, saying the dog looks fine, and nothing's been done. So that dog is still there and looks...
It was at the dog park yesterday, and people were complaining about the fact of how thin she was.
And caked in fleas, like the fact that it's even going to a dog park.
I guess now it has a bloody spot on its butt. I got a complaint yesterday.
So when I ask John, our game warden, what's the deal? Because I thought there was a compliance plan, and I understand I'm not allowed, for whatever reason, to know what that compliance plan is. His response is, it's an open case, I can't tell you. So, but we all sit here, and all of us who have been involved with this and put in all this work to try to help this dog and these dogs and money and this and that, there's nothing's happening. Go ahead.
Is there a logical reason why you would exclude the town's ALC, the warden? Is it just...
I don't know.
Would it interrupt his case anyway? Would it,
Well, he and I clash.
Well, yeah.
We clash on a lot of things, and it's not just this case that we've clashed on. But
So for the future, though, are the game wardens still, because the big state statute that just changed is that there is going to be an animal cruelty person within the state government now, right? is it still going to fall under Fish and Wildlife? So they have no idea.
So we have this far to go,
Yeah.
and the change on July 1 takes us this far.
Okay.
So what July 1 gave us, it took away your ability to do cruelty investigations. Animal control officers now can't do animal
I
cruelty
thought in the
cases
statute it
anymore.
said they could. It
No.
said humane officers.
And an animal control officer is not a humane officer anymore.
But
Humane
changed the
officers are
definition.
law
Okay,
enforcement.
what was all the theory behind this?
So the theory was, submitted to legislature, which I testified on, was, I think it was a 62-page bill. And it was to create a new entity, an entity that would be responsible in the state for investigating animal cruelty, would have the resources so that if you had to take a dog away, there was somebody to pay for its care. And so what legislature did with that is they looked at it, 62 pages, and they said, yeah, looks interesting, something we need to explore. So we're going to take the first step of maybe 100. And what they did is they created one new position called the Director of Animal Welfare. And they're going to work for the Department of Public Safety. And their job for the first 8 months is to determine what's needed in Vermont. So they won't be doing anything with animals, they won't be investigating, they won't be supervising. They're simply going to look at the resources that exist and then report back to legislature. So that's all that happened.
And that bill took her authority away.
Yes.
So for the next 8 months or whenever, we have no one investigating animal cruelty,
You have
Law
game
enforcement.
wardens.
law
Can she
enforcement.
become a humane
Say
officer?
that again.
Start.
Can she be, is there,
I'm not going through the.
You wanna
police
get trained?
academy.
no, but I mean, is it like the academy type thing or?
No, now they don't even let
Okay,
you take the course.
now I'm going to ask the big question. If this is the case, what are we even doing here?
So I don't know. I don't know if a town can write an ordinance, as your board member talks to here. You have, and Aaron sent me a copy of it, it was
But
dated.
I'm reading the statute right now. So a humane officer,
Yeah.
so this is 13 VSA, Chapter 8, 351. A humane officer means a police officer's definition of A, so we'll skip that. But B, an individual has received the training required by Section 356 of this title who is a designated Humane Society employee or an animal control officer appointed by the legislative body or municipality who is authorized by the legislative body to perform the duties and functions of a humane officer.
So they have not updated the website. You're reading this on Vermont Statutes Online?
Yeah,
So, yeah, so,
but that's the definition they're giving.
correct. So, and I can, if you've got an email, I can send it to you right now. You can read it on my computer. That was changed with the passage of Act 167 that the governor signed into law. When did he sign it into law? June 10th.
Well, I have this as well. It shows it, so I guess I'm.
Does yours say Act or number 167 in the top right?
2024. And
Yep.
so this definition got an individual who has received animal control duty response who is an animal control officer employed by a municipal or state law
There you go.
enforcement. But she's,
She's not employed by a law enforcement agency, so you do have the
Yeah,
current
okay.
one. Yeah, they twisted it up, and it's caused a lot of difficulties.
Yeah, I can see.
Do they think the state can do a better job, or? I guess I'm totally
The
confused.
people that testified on this, my understanding was, there were situations in Vermont where animal control officers had fouled up criminal cases, had caused criminal cases to be overturned, had made a mess. And so when they made the changes, July 1, they said, we're out of concern, this is my words, not theirs, but out of concern that animal control officers aren't trained, aren't focused, aren't, doing things for the right reason. We're going to take away their authority unless they work for a police department. Now, if you have a constable who has law enforcement authority, they could do this, but they have to be a police-trained constable.
Now, do game wardens have to take any extra courses?
All police officers have to take 4 hours in investigating animal cruelty, that's all.
Wow.
Yeah. And game wardens just happen to be the de facto I know you don't have the best experience. I've had good experience with some game
Yes,
wardens.
me too.
I don't know
Me too.
your game warden here, but the game wardens ended up being the emergency failover because state police were so understaffed they couldn't do it. And they said, we just can't do this. And so they looked to the game wardens, and the game wardens agreed to take it on temporarily. Now, I don't think they envisioned that it was even going to be this long, and it's going to be longer.
Yeah.
Because even this new, they haven't even posted the job yet for this new director of animal welfare. I don't think they're required to be hired till the 1st of January. But even once they're hired, they've got this 8 months to put together a report back to legislature. And even if legislature, if the recommendation is, yeah, we need 8 or 10 people like Maine have to do this job in Vermont, then it goes to legislature. Then legislature has to do they have the money? Are they willing to dedicate the money? And even if they say yes, 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 it's the fastest a year from now before anything were to stand up. But I don't have, my personal feeling is that I'm not sure that we're going to see new positions in Vermont for years because of our taxing, our education expense, you name it.
So, she has no teeth right now, is what you're telling me.
Bingo.
Okay.
And even her expertise isn't,
You can enforce your town ordinances. Now, the town is obviously very interested in crafting an ordinance that might help you.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay,
So,
all right.
I mean, again, this ordinance is going to have to go, as far as I understand it, through the town attorney first,
Yes.
and then it'll come back to the select board for the voting.
Yeah.
Because I can assure you, none of us are lawyers on the select board. So, like I said, would there be I guess the question is, would there be an instance if we're only going after civil penalty,
Yep.
not criminal? Because this, I'm assuming the state statute's more interested in criminal.
That's all the criminal. That's
So-
correct.
So civilly, we have the full authority within our ordinance to potentially impound an animal that is malnourished if it's in our ordinance.
I believe, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what I
Yeah.
think to be
Yes.
true, but please.
So that-
Don't document it.
I want it on record that I'm not a lawyer.
So that means that you would have authority within the town.
To remove a dog.
Yes.
But-
you wouldn't have the ability to do a search warrant, most likely, because the only people that could do a search warrant.
you have to have all.
So if
Go-
the dog was running at large
Correct.
and
You could
Sam
grab.
picked it up. then-
Correct.
I mean, you still, currently, if you have, and I didn't read it recently, I apologize. Do you have a leash law now?
Uh-huh.
Do you have an under
Yeah.
control law?
Yeah.
I mean, if you see it off property today, if the ordinance says you can do it, you can do it. But if the ordinance doesn't speak to holding them, how long you can hold them,
And that, I think that's where our ordinance, so the problem is our ordinance was really,
Well, it wants an owner's identifier.
So the town, well, we can set our own, this is how long Sam's gonna hold the dog for before we send it to auction, or, I mean, just for, example. Or, they pay the bill. No, I mean, maybe pay the bill, or we, have it adopted at an auction, sorry.
It sounds like to me that we need to create our own ordinance that works for us until the state does something.
and I think that's where we're gonna do it. I
That's
mean,
where we're at.
a good example of an ordinance that just became obsolete in Williamstown, has nothing to do with dogs, is ethics. The state just passed a huge ethics bill. So that changed. So for me as a select board member, I do not have to follow the town's current, it's not an ethics, it's a conflict of interest ordinance.
Okay.
Because the state just said, all of these ordinances that every town in Vermont has is abolished because we want it from a top-down approach.
right? Yeah.
So this might be the stopgap measure until the state gets there. I mean, I think our goal was roughly November, December to try to have something done. So our current ordinance, just because I quickly looked, is really only fining something. So we don't have impoundment in ours. We don't have, so that's where I think the motion of going is, part of your penalty could be loss of the dog. Now, I don't know how the state views an animal as property, but I'm guessing if you
But-
leave a TV on the side of the street and someone picks it up, that's probably not considered theft, because it's not, you know what I mean? I don't know.
But you don't know who belongs to the TV. In
Exactly.
this case, we're going to assume you know who owns
Well,
the dog.
and impoundment and fees and all of this only works if we have follow-up, because we did hold that dog, and Jackie, the town manager, said, we're not getting this dog back because it's in poor shape and this and that. And the game warden said, we're giving it back following a compliance plan.
Yeah,
But there is
at the time, our ordinance didn't stipulate.
Yeah, so you should have
Anything.
been backed up in that instance.
By who? I was
But-
backed up by the town, just not by.
But you don't have anything in writing.
Because we don't have an ordinance yet. that
We don't
says
have an
that.
ordinance.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's unfortunately, in my opinion, it's writing versus writing. So now the state could come in, I'm assuming, and say, our attorneys feel that your ordinance X, Y, and Z, and then it goes into litigation, and then, again, the only people that are gonna win in that situation are the attorneys. But,
I'm gonna imagine that a game warden is not gonna spend time fighting with you if you've got an ordinance and it's passed legal muster and your
Yeah.
attorney has said, no, this is legal, it is valid, it's gone through your process. You as the board do your readings and then you vote it in. I'm gonna guess that a game warden is not gonna spend time saying, well, no, you have to give it back, and you say, well, I've got an ordinance that says I can hold it. I think that, my guess is the game warden's got plenty to do. They're not gonna worry about a dog if your ordinance gives you
Well, I
legal
think that's
authority to do
why
it.
currently he doesn't do anything, is
Yeah.
because he's too busy.
Yeah.
When you call him around hunting season, he has no time.
And-
Never has time even when it's. But,
They
right,
cover such wide areas nowadays too.
so I think that's where I think we're going down the right path. And, you know, even for instance, Williamstown contracts with Central Vermont Humane Society, which does 0 impoundment. So as part of our new ordinance, we have to figure out someone that would be willing to impound an animal. So that's something, again, as a select board member, that would be something the select board has to decide, just like Orange County Sheriff. We have to make that decision of who our law enforcement agency is going to be other than VSP. So the town contracts with Orange County, and we have to put essentially a bid out to say who would be willing to impound animals, and they would abide by that ordinance. So again, there's the legal.
And you also have to look at long-term, I
Yeah.
mean, the potential
Correct.
exposure. I mean, South Burlington, where I came from, the dogs are gone now, but they seized, I think it was 4 dogs from a camper. These were unhoused people that were living in a camper, and I think one of the dogs got away, and it was really skinny, and they went, and so they seized these dogs for neglect. They had the dogs for a little over a month, and before they were finally forfeited, but it cost them $10,000 for a month. Because they required veterinary care, the kenneling costs.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're headed down this road, then.
Yeah, and
you
we've
could be eyes wide
discussed that now, the camper situation, if someone's unhoused or homeless, but the town does have the authority to put a lien against someone's property.
open. Right, yep.
So in the South Burlington scenario, that would not have worked in Williamstown.
Yeah, right.
I don't believe we have, and we do have ordinances like that. I believe the big one is the trash ordinance. So if someone's entire yard is derelict and they've got junk cars and someone complains about that, the town can essentially remove all those vehicles. I'm not saying it's ever used. I'm just saying.
I mean, I didn't want to say it, but they have a couple properties.
But the town has the authority to charge that property owner the removal of all of that, and if the property owner doesn't come up with bringing all of those junk cars to the metal recycling, the day that house is sold, that liens on that property.
They got paid lien off, yeah.
And I'm assuming it gains interest over time, or it can potentially keep multiplying every day. I mean, I believe that's how the ordinance is written. So every day that fine isn't paid, it just keeps.
Well, that's how a lot of them do it with the dogs, is like you pay by the day.
Yeah.
Because the dog, Buckethead from Derby, he had to pay each day that they had him, and then his medical costs, and then they have to take him to the vet once a week for 4 weeks or something.
Why do they know his compliance plan?
Because they have a different
I know.
worded.
Yeah, so it's,
It's ridiculous.
Is there a different definition between domestic farm and pet? Do they have a separate ordinance for that?
Depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about state law, then they are defined differently and they're in the statute.
yeah.
If it's your ordinance, you decide what they're gonna be.
Yeah,
You define them in your ordinance.
But who in the court of law is going to, is our ordinance more powerful in the court of law than the state statute?
I don't know that one would be more powerful.
We
than
can't go
another.
above it.
What I'm saying, okay,
Beyond it,
all
you know what I
right,
mean?
all right. So we've got to track state, whatever the state ordinance.
Yeah, we have to
okay.
work inside
That's
the
what I
laws.
wanted to make sure. Yeah, I wanted to make that clear in my own head. Yeah.
And, farm, Aaron, you are right. I mean, farm animals or livestock, I think because it's defined in state law, you couldn't, I think you would have challenges if you suddenly decided pigs were pets. Right?
Well, we are, and that's a challenge we're facing. So,
Rabbits was
the VLCT has a model ordinance for domestic animals
Yep.
and domestic pets, or dogs. So we're kind of making dogs into a domestic pet in some ways. Because the state does define livestock differently. So, and this is actually, I had to look it up and I couldn't tell you the rule off the top of my head. But essentially, if, I think it's under 4.5 acres, or a certain head of cattle, or a certain amount of pigs. So if I, Tyler Mitchell, and I used this last meeting, I have a half an acre, literally live right over there, I decide to get a pig and say I have a pig farm, the state won't recognize that as a pig farm. I have to either have X number of pigs or enough land.
Yeah.
So, because again, I think Heidi's Haven has shown that she does have swine, but they're not, there for, what's the word?
Commercial.
Not commercial
Yeah,
purposes. They are essentially pets, and I think people do have pet pigs. So we are trying to combine those so that essentially, right now our domestic pet definition is any sentient animal that's purpose is for the enjoyment or companionship to an owner.
Okay. So
So-
we count the pigs, I guess.
Yeah, so, and a domestic, and we are using the domestic animal definition from the state, which is cattle, sheep, goats, equine, cultured fish. It lists a whole bunch of
there's a whole
things.
bunch, yeah. But no, you're not alone. It's horribly frustrating, and particularly with the newest change, is that it just pulled the rug right out from towns to be able to do their own. Because a few, and there were a few. There's a few cases where animal control officers really made a huge mess. But I wish they'd spent a little bit more time studying it and to say, if we've got a few bad apples, then deal with them. Don't.
Well, and
Penalize everybody.
I don't even care if the follow through is taken from me. It would be nice, like in all the towns that I work for, which is Berry City, Berrytown, Berlin, Williamstown, the ones that have police departments, which is everyone but this one. If I go to an officer and say, hey, look, I was just at this property, there is a dog that is incredibly thin, the people have a ton of other animals, I need help. They don't say like, well, I'm sorry, but I drove by there and all of those animals looked fine. Like I'm included in the follow through, and I mean, they do go in and remove what they can, so that it's that the law enforcement, when there's not a police department, it's really hard to get them to, I honestly, like, our specific game warden, I've probably been studying animals and doing this since he was born. You know, like, so, and he took, last time I talked to him, he hadn't even taken the animal cruelty course with the police department. So
So he's brand new then.
he was when this started. Now it's been like 2 years.
But it's not all game wardens.
No.
Because Sam and I both worked with other game wardens that had no problem. I had, for the Athena case, there was 4 dogs that were completely starved, and he went right in and removed them all.
Same with the Corinth case.
Yeah.
And I saw that game warden, Mike Scott, was who I worked with in Corinth, and I ran into him at the Tunbridge Fair, and he was like, how are things with Heidi's Haven? Like, and I was like, they're the exact same, because nothing's changing, so.
So I feel like it's specifically Williamstown, because we don't have a police department, and our game warden truly appears to not care.
So I'm gonna follow up, I know we spoke to Sheriff Contois, but I will look up the contract that the town has with the sheriff. I mean, again, he seemed very open,
I mean, he said that somebody sat outside there.
yeah. And again, unfortunately, Orange County Sheriff is not doing very well right now on just, on their end. So they are on their last strings of what they can really do. But I think we do have an ally, and again, I can look at the contract and really look at,
And I
Well,
think, looking at like the Corinth case that Mike Scott helped with, like the answer wasn't like, go to jail for animal cruelty. Like, I don't care. I want, like, that person in Corinth was able to get 4 dogs back. But those are dogs, 4 is a much better number than
40.
26 or however many she had, and so to me, like, great, that is manageable, and then he periodically checks in and makes sure that the numbers are still low, like, I don't need Sheila to go to jail. I would like it to be her to be helped, and these animals that like we just keep seeing that are posted on Facebook every day, that it's like, I had to like block her because I couldn't keep seeing it. People still send me
Yeah, she uses the word conditioned.
conditioned athletes. I was at the Tunbridge Fair and took plenty of pictures of these show pigs that do not look like her pigs. That she says she has show pigs.
Does Vermont have anywhere the ratio? I mean, I could probably.
However many you want.
You can have as many as you want. I mean, I can have 40 dogs all by myself.
As long as they're cared
Except
for.
you go for them.
Because in
And even
California,
then-
they have a set now. You can have this many dogs.
Yeah,
There are some, I don't know that it's happened in Vermont. I mean, I teach all around the country. I know that there's several areas of the country that say you can have 3 dogs per residence. But I've never heard of anyone in Vermont.
Do we have anything to do
doing
about their waste? The pet waste?
that. Waste?
Yeah. Their
Like fecal
removal,
matter.
Dog.
Hooper scooper law, I mean, if it
But like,
goes-
Well-
if you go on your own property, if it goes on the neighbor's property, you gotta pick it up. But-
As long as it doesn't smell or whatever, it's.
And again,
I know,
it's basic, hygiene. It can't draw pests. It
Okay.
can't be a concern for, spread of disease. Yeah, I mean, that's something a health officer, if it were out of control, a health officer might be able to help out with if you had a very unsanitary condition.
Yeah.
the
Well,
health
I think
officer
it-
already did that.
But
I
how would
think
you
it
know?
can-
Sometimes,
And I think it can draw pests like rats as long as it's just affecting your own
property.
house. Because there are rats.
yeah, I don't know, I mean, I can try to follow up with what the health
Your
officer
health officer would
found.
know that.
Oh, she's
I mean,
disgusted by it.
again, I'd have to look at that ordinance. The thing is, we have multiple ordinances, whether or not they're being followed, and as I'm on the select board, I'm learning that a lot of things are not being followed.
Sure.
Do we have a constable anymore?
I've never even heard of having a constable in Williamstown, but there might have
Brookfield
been one.
does.
Because I was
I
like,
work with
Kid.
Brookfield.
course does.
I was
It's a
gonna
little
say
longer
that-
than I wanted
Aaron,
to
that
be
was
there.
a
I
hot
just thought
minute
that-
ago.
That was like 4 years ago. Okay, never mind.
I don't remember. a
Yeah, I just gave
constable
myself a
was
little heart attack, I think. That was a long time ago.
Be careful at your
He
age.
used to be the constable for the town.
Who did?
Bert Heath.
Bert Heath, really?
He was there for years.
Oh, I don't,
For years,
I've known
yeah.
Bert, but I didn't realize he was constable. I can talk to him about it.
Maybe you weren't born yet like Aaron.
But I mean, we have the right to have a constable, so if that's a concern as well, I mean, that's something the select board could look at, so I will put that up my notes.
They have their own challenges, but there are towns that manage them effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would be an
you'd have to
awesome
find out, I don't know, your
I'm
constable, if
fine.
that's elected or appointed.
Yeah.
Was elected, I remember, yeah.
It was
Would you
elected.
vote for me to be the constable?
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally would.
I have a degree
I'll
in
help you
criminal
make
justice.
sense.
Oh, see, there you go, Laura, yeah.
I went to Penn State for it,
There you go.
and then I just don't use it now.
Dad would be proud. He loves this.
Your dad was a smart man.
Yeah. He has 6 kids and none of us went there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, as long as we can make essentially our ordinance until the state steps in with something better.
And I don't know about seizure of property, but I'm guessing you probably can do that. I mean, the town attorney will tell you if you
Yeah.
can do that or not, you know.
Yeah.
That, you know, if somebody doesn't pay your bill, then you can keep the dog and bring it home.
Well, I feel like the VLCT, I mean, again, we're working off the VLCT
Yeah.
model ordinance.
Well,
Why-
our lawyers know what they're doing, so.
Why, domestic animal?
Was it 5 years?
So it was the domestic animal, so that's where they use impound more means seize, take legal custody. Such play might be in or out of town. Oh, and then impoundment expenses means all costs incurred by the town related to the initial impoundment. So if a town can take a cow, I don't see why it would be illegal to take a dog.
Sure. Yeah.
That's why we're using.
Property's
these
property.
Exactly, so.
And also a question you talked about last time, I've got a dumb question, but do horses have to pick up after, not horses, but horse riders have to pick up after their horses?
Only if it's on someone's property.
I mean, how does that?
Yeah, we discussed that.
Yeah,
I think I just saw, I saw it, I must have seen it in your,
update.
Well, yeah,
I think I might have been in the meetings too, but.
Yeah, we had discussed, because that was a big thing of, she's not here for the pet ordinance committee, I'm pretty
You
sure.
could join.
Um,
have too many things in my
Yeah, the only one we looked at not picking up waste was a horse on a public way, because I've never in my life seen a horse rider.
Stop, pick up, yeah. Yeah.
or notice even.
Yeah.
Don't see that in fairs, no.
Yeah.
Or parades even.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
Sometimes they do actually have bags that hang off of them and catch
Yeah.
it, but that's more of, I think, like a New York City kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Vermont's like, nah.
yeah, I think we're making ground, it's just, we need to keep,
Chopping away.
I think
Who defines, if Sam says that dog's malnourished, whose definition of malnourished?
A vet.
Because I imagine you'll find 4 different vets that will tell you.
yeah.
I mean, if it's in an
Yeah.
ordinance.
Do we need to
you
put
know,
a vet in our ordinance?
No, you don't have to define malnourished. I mean, if they're arguing, if Sam says it's malnourished and the other person says it's not, if it's an ordinance violation, then you're going to be going to court. You're going to be going to the judicial bureau, and then you would present your evidence that it was malnourished, and they would present their evidence that it wasn't, and the hearing officer would decide who was right. And if it was malnourished, then the fine would stick.
And like in your experience, because like what we ran into, I mean, I chose Onion River because they're my vet,
Yeah.
and they get me in right away. But I've used, one time I had to take a dog, they thought it was hit by a car, but it just wasn't, it just was
It's just mean.
horrible. I took it up to Chelsea Vet. I mean, I take them to whoever, but the game warden said that the dog owner at that moment was Sheila, said that Onion River and her, I forget what she said, but butt heads pretty much. So that's why they then let her take it somewhere. So she took it to her vet, which is Montpelier vet.
After being fed for 7 to 10 days.
And yeah, but it weighed the same. Like I mean, like I don't understand, because at Onion River, 41 pounds was a 2 out of 10,
Yeah.
a 2 out of 9. And at Montpelier Vet, well, we didn't get to see when she posted that what it said, but
Yeah.
was an okay weight. But it weighed the same. So even 7 to 10 days with me, that's not enough time to put on, whatever, as much as you need. So, like, whatever. So now, do I need to be careful about, like, what vet, like, how am I supposed to know?
Well, here's my question, because I'm not overly involved with all of what you do. But does the Humane Society use vets? Do they have vets?
They won't take a dog or a cat that is, quote, in need of medical attention.
But who do they use?
They use
for their-
Onion River. I know they've used Onion River. I think they use Bradford.
Don't they have a vet on staff that comes in a couple days a week?
Yeah, but I think it's Karen Bradley does it.
So my question, like, either, again, in our ordinance, we could state, I don't know if the town would contract with a vet, but we could list the vet. But I would say we are contracting with, like, that's why I bring up the Humane Society. The town pays the Humane Society. That is in with our municipal budget. So if they have a vet, I don't care if they take the dog or not, or the animal, but if they have a vet on staff from the
They
municipal.
won't use it.
So
They won't let the
No,
dog
but
in.
I don't see any issue with you.
Yeah.
If it's a town ordinance,
Yeah.
and you're the investigator, the ordinance says the animal control officer can investigate this ordinance, then you get to decide. I mean, you work for the board, you get to decide who you want it to go to. And if you're going to Onion River and that works, take it to Onion River. If the board now has a problem and says, gee, Sam, Onion River's charging us too much, or
Or you're in cahoots with Onion River.
or we
something.
feel an obligation as a board to take a bid and, here's the vet, whatever, I think you get to pick. You answer to the board, but you get to pick.
Right, and I mean,
And I
when
certainly
I
would not
called-
take it to the person's vet. I mean, that.
well, and when
I struggle with
the
that.
dog was supposedly hit, Onion River couldn't see me till like 2. So then I called Chelsea vet, and they were like, yeah, come up. Like, it just was
I think-
whoever can
yeah.
see.
I think the thing that just like where the ordinance, where I'm seeing this going is where the ordinance would matter is if, you determine and a vet determines that because again, you're an animal control officer, you're not a veterinarian.
No,
Like, I work for Dartmouth Health, people ask me questions, I'm not a doctor. There's people that have gone to medical school, let me go ask that person that's spent 17 years of their life in school. Again, I think it goes to litigation.
Right.
But the ordinance could stipulate, if it's in litigation, the dog is the town's until,
right,
that
okay.
could be a part of the impoundment clause. Is
Okay.
If there's a question, the dog will be held especially in a cruelty situation. I'm not talking a dog doesn't have their rabies vaccination, or, was it just running at large. If there's a unsafe situation for said animal, and that, the town now has possession of this animal. I mean, again, this is kind of like the firefighter in me. As soon as your house catches on fire, it's no longer yours. It is the property of the fire department.
Well, and you would think, like,
And the second, and we had a fire in Williamstown right when I rejoined in 2022. As soon as the fire investigators got there, the fire chief's like, okay, we're good. And the property owner said, you're not stepping on this property. And the fire investigator said, okay, we can't. But as long as the fire department says we could be there for 4 weeks. As long as there's a member of the fire department there, that house is owned by the Williamstown Fire Department. And then, the guy didn't get his homeowner's insurance, and then he suddenly let the investigators on.
Right.
But I would say that would be kind of how we look at it in an ordinance perspective is, how do we define impoundment and animal cruelty, and what would be the role of the town holding if it has to go to litigation? Because I think we've already put in that they are going to pay for the impoundment expenses.
Right.
So if they are going to fight you over the vets, whoever you as the animal control officer chose to be the veterinarian, they can get their vet at you know, within wherever the dog is being impounded, and if there's a discussion, then again, I know Orange County, I don't think, not the sheriff, but I think the court system is a little backlogged right now, so from what I've read in the papers.
Everything, yeah.
They probably don't want to get fined, even if it's $20 a day, you know.
Right,
So,
right. Well, yeah. I don't
I
know.
think the big thing is for us to write an ordinance and let the legal system take a look at it.
yeah.
And
that's
our
it.
town attorney might come back and say, no, you can't do that.
Exactly, and the town attorney can say, you can't do that, but you can try this.
This, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's, you know, lawyers, the word "the" means something in the law, so.
And many attorneys have maybe already done some work with another town that they can
Right.
take from.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I wish it was an easy fix. I mean, it's not easy, but, you know, I think what my dream was like Maine. I mean, Maine has a division of animal welfare, so they have law enforcement people, that's all they do. They deal with animal cases.
Sure.
But, you know, that requires money, it requires a budget.
So it would be nice though.
That was the vision when that 62-page bill went into legislature last year, was that, you know, it was going to be paid, I think it was a tax on pet food, and there was a couple other ways that it was going to get paid. It's how Maine does it, but Vermont, they weren't interested, not at that time at least. We'll see where it goes. And it makes it really, really difficult for towns that don't have a police department.
Yeah.
Really difficult.
And, I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately and you know, there's the fine line. Williamstown, like Heidi's Haven and Ferrisburg, correct? That's where she was. They have zoning. Williamstown doesn't have zoning. And I can assure you, if you mention the Z word,
You won't be on the board anymore.
I don't even,
You might not live for 24
yeah,
hours.
exactly. So the people within our community, you know, it's their property.
Free will, yeah.
You know, it's, and that, we have that standard, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that standard. What I think, again, what's wrong is that if an animal is running at large, which is already in our ordinance, so that's nothing new, we just have to figure out a better way to deal with it. And again, it's care for the animal, because if the animal's not on your property, you don't care, and trust me, my dog has gotten loose. I mean, my older dog, he's now deceased, but my young dog, you know, it happens. The door gets left open.
Yeah.
You know, things like that happen. But if your dog is consistently getting out, then that's the issue. It's not a one time. I think we all are human beings. So if a dog is loose, and then it's a German Shepherd that's supposed to weigh 100 pounds, and it weighs 50 pounds, now we've got an issue.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to look at, right? I mean, I think that's kind of.
And the other thing is, our opinion of an animal being sickly is going to be different than the next person.
Yeah.
Some people will say, if you can see 3 sets of ribs, they're not feeding it. Well, I've had dogs, and my dog now, when it's working hard, you're apt to see a few sets of ribs.
And again, I think that's where going to the vet. That's the person that makes that opinion. You know, that's a medical.
Right.
You know,
Expert.
human medical doctors have to take the Hippocratic Oath. They have to, you know, they have to abide by ethics and standards and what have you. And I'm assuming vets have to do something very similar.
Well, and I may put in the back of my mind here, next time this comes up in legislature, because part of that 62-page bill was also to register and have inspection standards for rescues.
Yes.
Because there are none in Vermont. So that was a very critical part of, we need to make sure, and I think it probably was because of your case, that it was like there's a need for this to be codified in law, so that you folks, you know, the town of Williamstown, and even more importantly, the animals there aren't just left without any help.
So what, like, in your opinion, what is my next step in that case? Because I mean, I would say probably twice a week, I send emails to the game warden and say, like, here's the complaints I received this week. And generally I don't get any response anyways, and I have no idea if he's gone there or not. But anytime an animal is off of that property, I get a call. Like, right? I mean, what did you say?
Just because it's a loose animal or the condition of the animal?
No condition, never because of a loose animal.
Okay.
And the woman who is the one who found that pit bull, I don't think would have even called me if it wasn't in the shape it was in. Like that dog, there was a loose dog on Casino Road yesterday. You sent me a picture of it, and it looked good, and I didn't get one call about it. Because it belonged to a neighbor, so I think generally speaking, no, it's always the condition of the animal.
A lot of times, isn't it too, they're getting into compost because they're like so
Yeah, well, usually it's, besides body condition, it's sores, hair loss,
yeah.
stuff like that.
So, I mean, this is my opinion as your select board member, because I'm looking at our ordinance. Follow the ordinance to a T. So if you get a complaint, if you have the time, go get the dog.
Well, usually she's with it. So
Okay, so it has to be-
she's
okay.
off the property
Yeah,
with
so
the
yeah,
dog.
no, it can only be,
All right.
because right now we don't have any animal cruelty, but if there was a loose dog without the, being under control of the owner, I mean.
Oh, I would go get it in a heartbeat.
But the first, second, third, and subsequent offenses, I mean, after the fourth offense is a $500 fine.
Yeah.
That's
So-
what we're trying to make. Tried to get me to get that dog last night.
So that's, you've got to follow our current ordinance
So
at every opportunity you got, because it only adds up.
But what about
And you have the authority to write tickets.
right, but what about the state statute piece of it? Is it just relaying, as animal control, relaying that information via email to the game warden? I mean, is that all that I can do?
And, well, I mean, there's more avenues. I mean, it's Fish and Game, it's a law enforcement agency, it's a hierarchical organization. So, the game warden has a boss, who has a boss, who has a boss, who has a boss. And, I always recommend first to be nice, and to try, it sounds like maybe you have, but to go one-on-one and say, listen, we've got this ongoing problem, we've got this concern, can we talk? Can we meet about this? If you're getting no response or whatever, then, an option, I'm not saying do it, an option is go right online. You can find out who that game warden's boss is.
I've been two above.
And go.
That's as
You
far
have
as I've
already,
gotten.
okay. I mean, the other thing that can happen too, and this is where we start to get less nice, is that you work for a board. Your board represents the taxpayers of this community who also pay state taxes. Your board member can call the boss of the boss of the boss and say, listen, we've got this case, animal control is trying to reach out, we're not getting any communication, we're frustrated, and try to talk one-on-one. The board, I've seen this with the state police, where boards have been displeased with the state police response and said, we'd like to invite you to come to the next select board meeting, we want to have a chat in public session on TV. It's less nice as we go, and that sometimes can destroy relations, so I always say, start low, and it sounds like you've been
Maybe
trying.
I will contact him and see if I can meet with him in person again. But
I mean, email is tough, and I get that game warden, everybody has got too much to do with too little time, but still, I mean, basic just courtesy is if you send him an email, even to write back.
That's
and
what he
say,
tells me.
Sam, thanks for the email, but you know what, there's really nothing we can do, or here's what, at least tell you something.
well, and I always say on email, I'm always like, if there's nothing you can do, I need you to say that she is in compliance so that I can then tell people who call me and yell at me
Yeah.
that the state has said she is okay, and just, and he won't do it. It's an open case.
Yeah.
So, and for a while I was having people call him directly, but he didn't like that.
Well, there's another option, right?
Right?
I
It's
was
not
like,
your
I'm
case,
sorry,
it's
you
his
have
case.
to call
Yeah.
him directly.
Well, no, I mean, that's a legitimate thing, though.
Yeah.
It really is legitimate.
If the ball is in the state's court,
Step away.
yeah.
And if he doesn't wanna
And
get called.
as I get older, I've learned that, like, there's battles you have to fight, and there's battles you have to fight, let someone else fight, and not necessarily for you, but you've done what you can do. We have our current ordinances that's at your disposal, and the board will back you 100%. But if the state of Vermont has now opened a case, and it is an open case, right?
Oh,
Then
well, that's what I said.
you have to say to the person, like I said, if I'm at the Dartmouth ER and a patient asks me, hey, what's this, what's my lab result? I can tell them, yes, your lab result has resulted, but I'm gonna go get a doctor. It's way out of my purview. So now just, say, please contact this game warden.
Yeah.
And the game warden might eventually, and I do know the game warden, but the game warden might eventually be sick and tired of getting 20 phone calls a day, because the only way those phone calls are going to stop are by him closing the case. So that's the reality of it.
And is each case, so when he says there's an open case, like, I would assume by now that pit bull that was picked up running loose and is supposed to be following a compliance plan, that case should be closed. Now, there might be another case on her, or is it all one huge case?
Could be.
Whatever he defines it
Okay,
as,
so
it
that's
could be
one
all in
big
one, it could be individual, I mean, it's hard to say.
Okay.
I don't know what his.
Because I'm like, my
definition of
God, how
case
many
is.
open cases?
Yeah.
You have to close something,
Yeah.
like, but he's like, no. Okay,
So,
Yeah, I mean, this all started by, what's her name?
Lori Lawless.
Lori Lawless.
Coming to the select board. That's where this all really began. And I think she was a big part of Act, or what is it, 167?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, as a member of the select board, I do think we are listening. I mean, the pet committee didn't happen because we're not listening. We're all here today because something needs to be done. But like, I would suggest what, is it Trevor?
Yeah,
Trevor. Trevor suggested just say, that I have no authority over the states. Send them trust me, I've been to I'm a fish and wildlife instructor. I go to a lot of events, and they always say, how to contact us. So, and that is
Well,
that is in the
I'll
back
let
of
this little
that is
cell phone
that is in the
in
back of either the Fish or Hunting Digest. So every game warden's personal cell phone
Yep.
is there.
Yeah.
So, and that's maybe it might have to be that you have to step away from it. And I mean, I will talk to the board too. We could potentially say that, the town could put a posting out saying that for that particular incident, I don't know if we can or cannot, but maybe it's our animal control officer has no authority over this at this point. So maybe with public announcement, please contact
John, right,
Yeah.
at this number.
VSP.
You can probably put whatever you want on at least the town's Facebook page.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, but no, because again, it saves you time if you can't do anything.
Well, and then it also makes people like, when I'm like, I need you to call this person, they're like, forget it.
Right, you don't care, you're
so
not
it's
doing
better
anything.
it would be great if we could post somewhere like, hey, all, concerns regarding, you could even just say
I was gonna say
animal cruelty.
I mean, it's still, I argue with some people, but I still think there's a very important place for an animal control officer where, let's take the one headache you're dealing with out of it, but if I lived in your town and somebody said, my dog was, tied up out back last week when it was so hot and sunny and it had no water and it wrapped itself around a tree and there was nobody home, is a game warden going to come to that? I think those are very important things. It might be cruelty because I'm not providing proper shelter, I'm not providing water, and I think that there is a time and a place when the animal control officer is the right one for the animal's sake.
And 90% of the time, people are like, oh my God, like,
They just need education.
I'm so sorry.
many times.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be left blindsided either, as far as like if it's the same, you know what I mean? Like maybe if it's like you've gotten 3 complaints, okay, now they go directly.
Right.
Or even to repeat, somebody calls you about her and say, listen, it's currently an open case and you're gonna have to call the game warden, he's the investigating officer. Versus all cases have to.
I don't think the all cases,
Yeah.
I will talk to Jackie, because I don't have Facebook, I don't have social media, so. But,
Smart man.
Don't do it.
but I don't think that would be, I just want to make sure we're not slandering anyone.
Right, I mean, there's this delicate balance where, you still need each other and you don't want to completely alienate.
Well, and I'm just saying, like I think you made a point. If essentially you're the middle person that has no authority over this, the right thing to do would be to say, it's not playing telephone anymore, just get out of here. And person complaining, the person that's going to be doing the investigation.
It saves everybody's time, it saves their time, it saves Sam's time, you know what I mean?
And I think that's just the reality of it. I mean, sometimes you do have to have the middle person in there, but at some point, you're going to realize, in this particular instance with Heidi's Haven, you're not the investigating officer anymore.
No.
So-
And then when they call, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do anything, stop.
Yeah, so.
I know, I'm mad too, like.
So
when
I think
the-
that might be a good thing at this point, and I will mention that to Jackie to see if
Okay.
we can put something out, and not on the Billtown chat.
I was gonna say, Billtown chat, post up a
because
bunch of pictures.
The Facebook, because the town I do does have an official
They
Facebook
do.
page.
But nobody goes there.
Someone will cut, someone will take a picture,
Yeah.
share it.
Well, the other day with the water, they were like, is there still a boil water notice in Billtown page and Williamstown official page
Yeah.
that said it's
Yeah,
been
so
lifted. I haven't seen it anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, because nobody posted on Billtown page.
Yeah. So I think we're at time, or a little past time.
Next meeting,
Can we do the 7th? Are you free?
what?
That 7th, are we free, October 7th?
Let me just look here. My typical Mondays.
I'm a jumping date, but.
I am
Looks
free.
good for me.
I am good.
Me too.
Cool.
Are we still doing 3 or did we need to do?
No, Mondays work for me to get my,
Yeah, that
to
should
get
be
my
fine.
Is
kids.
that good for everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
October 7th, 3.
All right, I make a motion to close the meeting.
I'll second it.
Cool, thank you. Trevor, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I would like
Yeah.
to help, but hey.
It's all
I can't tell you how many people are like,
Okay.
oh,